Hey, it's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Radcliffe.
Andy Bowersox with us on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and on the radio. Looks like there for a second he's doing his own maintenance with that tape.
Duct tape is all you need, dude.
I was trying to hide that. I think I'm just going to hold it for right now, though.
Hey, we've seen everything, Andy. We have seen everything. Andy is one of the founders of Energized Ministries, and they encourage and support spiritual leaders and inspire others to do the same. Andy, I love what you do. I didn't know that you do what you do, but now I do. Does that make sense?
That's a lot of dues.
I would say that sounds like a Dr. Seuss riddle, but I won't touch that with a 10-foot pole today. So we'll just move on.
I
like this guy already, Rick.
Yes, great guy. Hey, if you read Andy's bio on the website there, you'll see that I picked out this one line, and I want him to respond. He has an insatiable appetite for adventure.
Ooh, insatiable. I love that word.
Tell us more.
Well, so first of all, I'm a first-time guest on your show here, and you guys are ranking as the highlight of my day. So,
all right, that's
hopefully
good.
we'll keep it like that. But yeah, so I lead a ministry called Energized Ministries. If your fans or listeners not familiar with that, our ministry provides encouragement, refreshment, and recreational outings and retreats for pastors, their families, and other. You mentioned spiritual leadership. We call it kingdom leadership.
Yeah.
But that initial. That's a great segue into the start of our ministry. And where that came about is, for probably as long as I can remember, I have been the fun-loving, adventurous friend from elementary to junior high to high school. I was sort of the go-to guy for fun and adventure in our little circle of friends. Mm-hmm. And as I got older, I actually recognize that's a gift from the Lord to be able to provide encouragement through fun and recreation. Mm-hmm. And I have long had a heart for pastors. You know, you guys know, you've probably interviewed enough of them, that there's a lot more criticism that goes around in the world of church leadership than there is care and concern, and in our case, preventive care and even prayer support. Mm-hmm. So one day I invited a local pastor to come on an ATV adventure. It was just about 4 or 5 hours out in the woods. This particular pastor had 7 children. 6 of them were girls. He only had one son, and they never really got to do guy-type adventurous things. So we found ourselves out in the woods with some ATVs and some campfire sticks and hot dogs, and just had a recreational afternoon. And within a few weeks after that, he kept calling me, and I always explained that he was overly grateful for that experience. Mm-hmm. For me, it was just a typical Saturday. But for him, it happened to be monumental at the time and the period of his life of things he was going through. And so he's saying, I really feel like the Lord wants to see me help you start a ministry to do what you do for other pastors.
Wow.
I said, well, what is it I do exactly? Like, we're just not screwing around. But here we are 12 years later, and the Lord has really, brought us into this preventive care and prayer space, where not only do we provide all kinds of radical, crazy recreational experiences, but really it's about our ministry is about engaging an army of believers that are committed to reinvesting and sort of refilling the pictures of their own pastors' lives, and really just shifting an entire culture within the walls of the church.
Yeah, looking through your team members there on the website, I see several of them are pastors to pastors, and I love that, because so many pastors just feel like they're on their own, and they've got to pour out and pour out and pour out, and they never get poured into. So it's so important for a pastor to have a pastor.
As you guys know, we are very good about leaning on our pastors, and if you use the old analogy of the water pitcher, when you're constantly being emptied and poured out, somebody's got to refill.
Right.
And I often think, when you mention that, there was a church we stopped at, and it was actually in Western North Carolina a few years ago. And we were on tour. We randomly just stopped in there just because we felt like the Lord said, hey, stop in there and visit these guys. And it's a pretty good sized church. And so as we were, we wheel into this big bus that we travel around with, and we met with the pastor, and he said, in 35 years, no one has ever come into this parking lot to just pray for me. He said, it's always the other direction. Wow. And that really stuck with me. It's not that we don't want to. It's just oftentimes we don't think that our pastors are people too. They have the same needs. And honestly, if you're a leader that's effectively drawing people closer to Christ, then the level of spiritual attack and warfare there, it's almost incomprehensible to those that aren't in those shoes. So that's our heartbeat, that's our passion, and we're doing our best to do what the Lord's called us to do to encourage and lift these guys up.
Talking with Andy Bowersox, Energized Ministries, energizedministries.com. I love this. Let me talk about a few things here. They just did a Valentine's dinner, and no expectations on the pastors and wives. They just relax. They do a golf tournament, and the pastors' wives brunch as well. All right, Andy, 30 years ago, I was a lead pastor. Where were you then?
So, yeah, I mean, you guys have done a little bit of research on our website there. I love it. I love
the we stalked you. Yeah, we stalked. I mean, we've done our research.
Familiar with what we do, but it's really you called it right there. Everything that we do is a gift of appreciation. We are strong believers that you can't be a gift if there's any strings attached to it, any encumbrances, and we hear it regularly. And as you know from your own experience, there's people that say, you know what, we can't even get in the car to go to lunch with somebody without that little, like, in the back of your mind, wondering, what does this guy really want? Is it to be leaned on? There's always sort of an agenda. So we're very, very guarded about that. Not just for the Valentine's events; those are super special in February. But everything that we do throughout the year, when we come to a new city, we're actually planning a go-kart race in New York City next month.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
We're gonna have a little faster pastor competition up there. But that's really, really key for us, and it helps us build trust and rapport with leaders that we really say, look, we're here for confidential care and prayer support. We want nothing from you other than just to give and to help refresh you and keep you energized.
Man, I'm sure they love that. And also, looking on the site, I see that you're in the process of starting to build a ranch or a kind of a retreat site. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there's a couple things about that. I told you that we provide a lot of recreational retreats and outings. The lodge is probably the paramount part of our ministry. About 6 years ago, we started leasing this entire retreat center. It's about 700 acres. It is completely dedicated to kingdom leadership retreats. So we don't offer Boy Scout or youth group type things. We don't do, discipleship things up there. All that are great programs, but we are very intentional and specific about investing in kingdom leaders. And so we offer up to 3 days, 2 nights at no charge for one of 4 purposes at our lodge. That is individually, if you're a pastor, a ministry leader that just needs time for prayer, for vision casting, that sort of thing, we offer it for that. We offer marriage retreats there, again, for pastors and other leadership, family retreats. And then if your church or organization is large enough for a staff, then we offer staff retreats there up to 10 people. Wow. So that you mentioned the giving part. There's a long-term strategy and plan for that over the next 10 years. We hope to develop it. We are in the acquisition stage right now. For a ministry like ours, that's very tough because I mentioned to you that we give. We don't really do any development work whatsoever. It's all we pray. We count on the Lord to provide. For 12 years, He has. And we are trusting Him in a big way to fulfill the purchase price of the lodge up there.
Right.
Andy Bowersox, Energized Ministries. Let me say this, Andy. Thank you so much for being obedient. You are pouring into, as you know, folks that step out and answer the call, and sometimes get beat up, sometimes get tired, sometimes just need just a little getaway or a big getaway to refresh, recharge, and move forward. I appreciate that. You doing that, and your team. I know you can't do it yourself. We got to go to a break here in just a second, but I would like to, I no doubt you've touched so many lives. Is there, and don't mention names, of course, but can you tell a story of maybe how a leader or leaders have been refreshed, and then on the other side of it, it's just really transformed their lives?
Yeah, well, I give you an example, a testimony we got in just last week. I know you guys are in Atlanta. We're based here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Our lodge is up in Southern Virginia in Martinsville. And so 2 weeks ago, we had a big ice storm up there. Mm-hmm. We had some guests that got trapped because of some trees that had fallen over the roads. They got out, but the next guests that were there, it just so happened that pastor used to be in the tree harvesting business. He was a woods cutter. And so he sent us a wonderful testimony about, spending time with the Lord, spending time with his wife. They absolutely needed it in these days of COVID, of mask wearing, not mask wearing, meeting, not meeting. I mean, there's a ton of pressure on our leaders these days, but it was a double blessing. We have a Jeep up there that we allow guests to use to ride around through the trails and the logging roads. And it happened to have a chainsaw in the back. Well, he helped himself to that chainsaw.
Wow.
And he said, I hope you don't mind. I cleared some of your trails. But he said it was absolutely therapeutic for me. He said, I really miss being out in the woods. And so he just went on and on about it. But that was unintended. But it was absolutely like something this guy needed. And the Lord couldn't have worked it out any better way. The trees were down. It was ice. He loved it. He got energized, encouraged. It certainly helped us to
you got free tree work. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that one thing just makes me smile, and it's indicative of so many practical ways that the Lord has used resources that He's brought in and through us to help encourage others, and so many times we see it come back to us as well.
That's awesome. Check out energizedministries.com. You can also see about the Love Your Pastor Tour 2021, which is also very cool. Be sure and check it out and see all the awesome work they do.
Now, I'm going to step out on a limb, no pun with that last story there, but you guys take donations. I mean, you're giving out. How can folks help you guys?
Listen, we never ask, but we do happily receive when it shows up. In fact, let me just show you guys, since we're on this little video, let me brag on the Lord for something here real quick. I want to show you.
Look at that. Wow.
This is what we call the God wall right here. And none of these things would actually mean anything to anybody else walking by. If you see, this thing that says sword and shield right here, this thing that says Indian man, there's a spot over here that says ETB. These kind of things don't mean anything to anybody else. But what that shows for us is a reminder that God is faithful, and we don't want to forget that. So a lot of those things, Rick, you asked about, support. Yes, we're nonprofit in every sense of the word. We count exclusively on God prompting people in His timing to support what we do. We don't have a development department, which, if you know the old story of George Mueller, we are very much the modern day George Mueller approach. But the reason we have that wall is because, as you guys know, since the beginning of time, go back to the Israelite days where they would see God do miraculous, extraordinary things, and the next day they forget and they're complaining about it. Mm-hmm. So we started that wall about 4 years ago. As you can see, it's jam-packed with what we call the fingerprints and the breath of God that we cannot explain any other way other than through He is faithful to provide for our needs, to provide our own encouragement, to just keep us going. And so that's sort of our Ebenezer wall right there. We don't want to forget it. And we always encourage other people to do likewise. Write down the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord.
That's funny. I was just about to say, that's your Ebenezer wall, and you called it your Ebenezer wall.
That's what we have right there. Yep.
Very cool.
Wow. I am so glad that we connected Trevor Tyson. Trevor, and that's how we found out about you. And love what you do. And we'd love to have you back on again, Andy, if you wouldn't mind. Go to energizedministries.com. It's a great place to go to. And just look at the stuff there. I noticed a blog, and I know we got to go to a break. Read some of the blogs there. This particular blog said, "The shattered dreams, what happens when your ministry doesn't turn out the way you thought it would." There's some really good stuff there. So check out their stuff. And also, if the Lord touches your heart and tells you to give, by all means, do it. Energizedministries.com. We got to take a break. Andy, what a pleasure. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.